Am I here as well? Oh yeah. Hello there. Welcome to Another Guitar Channel. Another Guitar Channel is a channel for all those guitarists who cannot play on an instrument but they love to turn the knobs. So we are at the right place because turning the knobs thing is as well changing the pickups, is, you know, tweaking your amplifiers, looking for the best set of strings instead of the best practicing on the guitar. Yeah. And this is Matthew. Matthew is making pickups actually by the name House of Tone. And the first time when I heard about you was the magazine. I think it was the Guitar magazine.
Yes, I think it would have been a Guitar Doc. Yeah.
And there was a huge article about that you're making the real, the proper Gibson path
replicas.
replicas, and they are like, you know, almost one-to-one like the old ones. But before we go to that, are you playing a guitar?
Yes, I play. Yeah.
You play?
Yeah, I played. I played for about. I don't know, since I was about 11.
So how did it start when you played the guitar? What was the trigger for you to start playing? You know, why the guitar came to your life?
I went over to a friend of mine's house who was at the time, it was just before I started high school, and he was sort of a new friend. You know, it wasn't someone I had known for long, and he had an electric guitar in his room. There we go.
Okay, so you got your friends?
A friend of mine who I had recently met went around to his house, and he had an electric guitar, and I said, "Oh, I didn't know you play guitar." And he says, "Yeah, I'm in a band with a couple of my other friends." So I said, "Fantastic!" I said, "Let me hear what you can do." And I said, "I've never got to actually try one myself. I've never picked a guitar up before." And we just, you know, he showed me a few chords, and we just had a bit, you know, a good few hours of you know, getting into it. You know, like next thing you know, 3 or 4 hours had gone by, and he said, "Oh, you know, you're picking some of this up, you know, pretty fast actually. Oh, it's all right." He says, "You should get a guitar and join our band." So I literally went home that night, Mom, Dad, I want a guitar, and they go, "Oh, okay, do you?" You know, and so next thing you know, a secondhand Harmony Strat, and then that was it, and I never looked back after that. Within a few years, I started apprenticing as a guitar maker and a folk instrument maker, making mandolins and dulcimers in the USA, and then moved to Britain and did a diploma in violin and guitar making. And then quickly went on to open a repair shop, a repair business for about 15 years, and then I launched House of Tone Pickups about 4.5 years ago.
So actually, out of playing, you came into making the guitar. So
yep.
you're not the guitar player, you know, but you were in a band or something like that.
Yeah, I did that during my teen years in the States. You know, we did bands. We did, you know, we went around sort of the local area where I'm from, sort of between New York and Boston, you know, by about 15, 16, I got very focused on building the instruments, and I knew this is what I wanted to do for a living. You know what I mean?
Where did that came from? Or the crappy guitar you had, the first one made you
No,
this, or people were coming to you to set up the guitar? Or what is it?
It was actually through high school. We had to take on a work study, so one day a week we had to go out to a job site and do a day's work at local companies and stuff, and I was just going from music shop to music shop. I just wanted to work in a music shop, and I got into this one music shop, and the guy took me into the back room. He said, "Yeah, I need a hand in the workshop." I said, "Oh, I didn't know you had a workshop." He said, "Oh yeah, we got a repair shop in the back." And I walked in, and there was just, you know, tools all over the walls, old guitar parts and old broken instruments hanging, and jars of varnish and weird bits and bobs and screws and springs. And I just fell in love with it. I just thought, "Oh, this is great. This is awesome. I want to do this."
First you were like servicing them, and then you start making your own guitars.
Yeah, then I apprenticed as a guitar maker shortly after that with artisan fretted instruments. Ivan Schmuckler, studied under him for a while. and then I worked for another firm in the States, making dulcimers and mandolins, and then I moved to Britain.
Okay. And in Britain you started House of Tone.
Yep, started House of Tone. Before that, I still run Bashetta Guitar Works, which is repair and maintenance and restoration work on stringed instruments. So we still run that alongside House of Tone.
So what made you making those replicas or the pickups inspired by the old ones? Why this kind of pickups you chose? What is it?
I mean,
Sound
personally, sound was the first thing. Because personally, I've got a real soft spot for a lot of vintage tones. I really enjoy, 50s and 60s.
Would you give us like 5 minutes for the interview?
Yeah,
Cheers, man. Sorry.
Thanks. I very much enjoy the vintage tones myself personally. The style of music I enjoy listening to and playing. It is a bit varied, but for the most part, I love some old blues. I love some old electric blues. A lot of Freddie King. Muddy Waters. A lot of the classics, of course. Howlin' Wolf. And just some of it too was the old recording techniques and everything, but it just this amazing tones came across, and you want to say, right, everybody says they're doing that. Can I do it better, or do I feel like all the other stuff that's out there on the market's really nailing it yet? And some guys are. There's some fantastic pickup companies out there nowadays. We're in a bit of a golden age of spoiled for choice. But I thought, no, I can do this too. And after years of doing repair and restoration work on vintage guitars, I've had a lot of experience with some great pickups, some great instruments, and also the demand is there. There's a lot of demand in the pickup world for vintage tones. So, if you're going to do it right. So I made quite the study of them, and one of the main things that came out about vintage pickups was the lack of consistency back then. There wasn't any consistency in terms of winds, magnet types, even staggers on some of the Fender pickups. Things changed all the time. And so trying to work around that to make a product that's based on that you can, make more than just one-offs of and sell, that was the main challenge, is how to come up with a formula that you can work with that is consistent in consistency.
Okay, so how did you start? Did you buy like all those old pickups? They're quite pricey. Some of them can cost like even 300 pounds or something like that. Well, did you buy them? Just make them, strip them out, and copy them? How was that? I
was very, very lucky that in my other business of repair and restoration, I've been able to see so many of these instruments over the bench and do very in-depth repair work. And at a certain point, I knew I was going to want to start a pickup company. So I started keeping a logbook of all the measurements and all the data I could get on every one of these beautiful instruments that passed over the bench. I would take, pole piece measurements, heights, staggers, spreads, string spreads, bevels on some of the Fender type pickups, gauze ratings, just all the different, and of course resistance rating, inductance ratings, and all the things you really need to understand why a pickup sounds the way it does. Because a lot of the time, in the consumer world, it's discussed in terms of resistance, isn't it? Resistance output. That's only one piece of the puzzle, and it doesn't tell you nearly as much as several other things put together do. So I learned that very quickly and started keeping a logbook of just these amazing guitars and pickups that came across my bench. And then I just study. I read a lot about how electromagnetics works, the basics of the physics behind it, the basics of everything right down to how the magnets are made and how they cast. And you take that knowledge, you put it all together with the experience of these instruments, and it just turns out that what I thought was the right formulas and a good way to go in these reproductions, seems to be widely accepted, because we've been making great sales, been growing year on year, and it's been fantastic.
Do you need to look for some kind of old stock parts parts in terms of magnets, of the wire, you know, I don't know, even waxing probably, or is it like easy to find some kind of replacement made now, like in modern times, or you need to like go you know?
It's not necessarily easy to find the right reproduction of parts, but that's what we've strived for. Our suppliers and the factories that we work with and suppliers we work with, we spent, before we even launched the company, we spent a good year and a half prototyping and tracking down exactly the right place to get what we need and to get it right. And this was a big thing with the True Paths. The main reason I waited 2.5 years after launching the company to make a path replica at all was because A, there's some fantastic replicas already out there, and I thought maybe the market's a bit saturated, but we kept getting asked and we kept getting asked, so I said okay. But I knew there was a couple of really big points about why a path sounds like a path, and it has a lot to do, you know, one of the secrets anyways is steel back in the 50s had a different carbon content than steel nowadays, and that's going to affect everything about how the magnetic field is shaped and worked. So all the steel parts, the you know, the keeper bars,
like the cover and the
no, actually, there's no steel in those. Actually, we have those made exactly as the old ones, made out of a nickel silver alloy, and then the plating methods are the old vintage plating methods where there's no copper layer in between. So we keep that very accurate. That's a lot easier to get our hands on nowadays. But the steel, making sure we could get the slug poles, the screw poles, and underneath you can't see them, but there's what's called a keeper bar or a shoe, and that goes underneath the coil that has the screw pole pieces, and those are all made out of steel. And the different carbon content in steel as compared to modern steel will affect the magnetics, and that will always change the tone. So we wanted to make sure we could have a consistent supply at a reasonable price of the parts we needed before we were ever going to launch a PAF style pickup. And when I got those things together and ran through a bunch of prototypes with it, you know, and I had a lot of good ears to listen to it. We had a, you know, I'll give a big shout out to our friend Greg Martin in the United States. He's a guitarist with a band called the Kentucky Headhunters, and we let him, when he was over here on tour, run through a real nice custom shop Les Paul, run one of the first prototype sets of our True Paths, and he played them on stage, and we had a good chat afterwards about what he thought, and he said, no, I think you're ready to take it to market, boys. He says, you know, it's good to go. And so with that kind of behind us, we were happy.
You keep some kind of old pickups from, you know, like the real ones, and you compare them as well?
Absolutely, yeah.
But you said there is no consistency, so
there's no consistency.
Did you choose the best ones out of those?
What it was is, after years of playing and repairing many old paths and the patent number pickups, and then after we launched House of Tone, I had done repairs and rewind work for original paths, and after, you know, coming through quite a number of them, I came up with the formula that I think balanced out at the best quintessential set, if you know what I mean. Again, lots of inconsistency on the output rating, lots of inconsistency on the type of magnets used, but we came up with the set the way we do it. We keep the wind fairly low, but, you know, not super low, but under the 8K mark. And then we also go with Alnico 2 for the bridge pickup and Alnico 5 for the neck as a match set. And I thought that is got to be the way to go. And then, you know, the first time we sent them off for a review anywhere was Guitar Magazine, and that was the article you saw. And they actually sent some of the guys up to our workshops to do a little bit of an interview with us about how, you know, pretty much what we're talking about here, about how we came about our path replicas. And they, you know, they gave us a 10 out of 10 Excellence Award, and it just really worked out. You know what I mean? They were really well received. Are
you making them like with old machines as well, or are you using some kind of new, you know, like?
No, we use a machine that is a modern built machine. Well, we have two. They're both modern built machines, but they work exactly the same way as the original Fender machines. So they're essentially the same motor as a sewing machine motor, you know, side mounted. The big difference nowadays is, yeah, we have a digital counter, you know, instead of an old analog one. Digital counter, it can pre-program and do stuff like that, but I never use it. I still just do everything, by eye, but it's all hand tensioned, it's all hand wound. Bar, we do have, it's not something we discuss too much, but we do have a special method that we use for the PAFs, and only the PAFs, because they were never hand wound. Original PAFs were always machine wound, but the machines back then, the machines they were using, were actually very, very a bit rough, a bit choppy in their side-to-side motions and how they built it up. It was not perfectly concentric, it was not perfectly consistent, as we've said. So we've got a way of trying to recreate that as best as we can. And again, it seems that we've nailed it as far as the market's telling us, anyways. They've become our bestseller now, and have been.
So to be perfect, you needed to copy something which is imperfect, and actually you needed to make it like you needed to make it wrong to be the
exactly.
good one, yeah.
It was like I was saying before. It's making consistent inconsistencies. It's a bit of an oxymoron, but that is essentially what we're trying to get.
Are you only making those replicas of the old stuff, or actually as well you are developing into modern pickups?
We have a number of more modern pickups. We have pickups that can do modern rock, heavy metal, if that's what you like, punk music. We've got every kind of vintage right up through the 80s, and we also have designed our own. We have Telecaster set called the Texas Tees. That's my own design. It's not based on any particular Tele sound. It's my own design. It's something I really love, and that has become our best-selling Tele set. Also, we have the 4.5 special humbucker. That's my own design. It's quite a special design that we're working on intellectual design rights for at the moment. So I won't go into a lot of detail of how they work. They almost work a bit like a semiconductor in terms of trying to, one coil tries to bounce the magnetic field of another off back onto itself, and it creates a very, very clear and very chimey humbucker that can give you just the string-to-string response. One of the best descriptions was it reminds people a lot of the really low impedance Les Paul recording pickups that Les Paul himself ended up settling on as his favorite later in his career. And it's very clear like that, totally hum canceling, and totally passive as well.
Coming back to those puffs, many people are saying well the puffs are not waxed properly, let's say, and actually they got this microphonic sound as well. Because the new pickups are waxed in some kind of way, but actually it's only the electrics, the movement of the string which is like affecting the magnet, and the sound comes just from this, and it's only electrical. With all those puffs, is it like it was like but the pickup was quite a microphone as well, and how the guitar sounds.
It's very important. It's very important, and it's the same with like. So all PAFs originally, as far as we've ever been able to see from original untouched PAF pickups, they were never wax potted, right? That's all. So as standard, that's all.
All right.
Now a lot of wax potted ones you see were potted later, as amps got higher wattage outputs, and music got louder. Rock music went on to bigger and bigger stages. They needed to start potting them. So you'd have these guys, some big names with their touring techs, or they'd stop in at a shop that had a well-known repair shop, maybe Denmark Street, or maybe Manny's in New York, and they would have them potted. That would happen over the years, but originally no, and it adds a lot to the general openness and, for lack of a better term, liveliness of the pickup. There's a life to it. It can still cause a problem, so we always offer to pot if the customer wants, but as standard we'll always do them unpotted, because that's how they were made, and that's how you get the best out of them. That's how you get the most quintessential, PAF tone out of them. But again, you can look back to early vintage style Fender pickups. They were wax potted, but very lightly. So there's varying degrees of how you can pot a pickup. You can go a light pot, a medium pot, a heavy pot. You can double dip. Some modern guys nowadays are doing vacuum potting. we don't like vacuum potting because it will make a very, very bomb-proof pickup, that's for sure, but you lose an awful lot of life out of them. You lose an awful lot of just nuances to the tone, just some of that specialness that's just actually really hard to find a descriptive word for. So we use words like the color of the tone, or it's very chimey, it's very bell-like, it's very glassy. We use all these terms, but they can be very hard to define. But all those special.
The word now on the market is organic.
Yes, I have seen that one being thrown around. Organic.
Everything is organic.
It's just as popular as boutique.
Yeah, boutique and organic. Now, why I've asked, because I've got one guitar, old Polish guitar with the pickup made in Poland as well by the guy, and it's totally unwaxed, and it's such a different story. Even if I've got like low output humbucker, which is quite comparable with the output of coming out of it, it sounds so differently, and you can hear the whole of the guitar.
Yep. There's that fine line of where microphonics is a help or it becomes a hinder.
Well, of course, with gent, with heavy stuff.
Oh yeah.
With all this
high gain,
new high gain music. It's totally you cannot tolerate it.
Even some older styles of music on say like a 335, a semi-hollow guitar, you might find that no matter what you do, you're still going to get a little too much microphonics. So you might want a light potting, as opposed to say in a solid body like a Les Paul, unpotted is perfect. Unless you're really running a at a 100-watt full stack and you're turning it up all the way, you're not going to need it. You're going to be able to get all those nuances out of it. But sometimes there is a time and a place where it is necessary. But like a lot of things in the guitar world, it all comes with a compromise. There's no one perfect thing and no one size fits all. So a lot of the time, if there's something you want to get, you got to give something else up. There's different ways to try and get the same result.
What I like, you may not like. What you like, I may say it's crappy.
Yep, absolutely. One man's trash, another man's treasure. Absolutely.
What was my last? Because you just took in so much, man. But actually, I forgot all my questions. The question was like, growing up.
You have to be told to stop.
I know. Because lots of people are saying the pickup is the most important part of the guitar. You're changing the pickup, and actually you buy yourself a crappy guitar, put some nice pickup, and it's gonna be better. Yeah. Of course, I know the answer because you are the person who's making the pickups. But seriously, what is the most important part of the guitar, which is like affecting the tone the most? What you think it is?
The first thing to look at is the style of build. If it's solid body or if it's semi-hollow or chambered. That in and of itself can make quite a big difference. After that though, I will say, especially on solid bodies, fully solid, probably a good 70% in my opinion is the electronics in total. Not just the pickups, but also quality and type of the electronics that are inside, the controls, and also the general circuit, how it's wired, how the chain of resistance is. So that's a very, very large part. Then after that, I'd say you're looking at things like the type of neck joint, type of bridge. Then after that, you start looking at things like material, the actual wood, the material of the nut, and then from there you go out and you look at the chain and you look at it in order. Lead, pedals, amp, and everything's speaker. Big
One
deal.
of the most important part people are forgetting about.
But I'm a big fan of following the chain, and the chain it goes from fingers to string to pickups, right? So those three things that you're initially looking at, your playing style, the strings you use, and how that's all affecting the pickups, because that's the foundation. Everything's added on top after that, but that's your foundation there, and I think that's very important.
So on the other hand, you just gave me the answer, but you didn't give the answer. Because you just mentioned everything.
I mentioned a lot of things. I would say primarily though, as I say, you look at the overall construction style, like I say. Is it semi-hollow? Is it arch top? Or is it a solid body? But then from there, the foundation starts at the electronics, and it starts from the beginning, which is pickups into your controls, into your lead, and all the way down the chain. But strings are well affected by strings, pickups are well affected by strings as well, so it's a factor to take into account. But when you get past the actual style of construction, it's got to start at your electronics, in my opinion. The more hollow a guitar is, if it has acoustical, more acoustical properties, or of course if you're talking about an actual acoustic guitar, then now you get into actual wood choices, tone wood and stuff like that. Solid bodies, not nearly as much of a factor. Electronics will trump that, in my opinion. But again, like we said, in the guitar world, it's just an opinion. There's a lot of opinions out there.
And the one thing which is important, which I think is very important, you forget about, is the frets.
Actually, yes, that's a very good point.
Stainless steel.
It makes a heck of a difference, stainless. I'm not a big fan of them.
I hate them.
Or the Evo, the hypoallergenic.
Evo Gold.
Yep.
Jessica Evo Gold, beautiful.
Yep. Yeah, that's all right. Even then, I noticed quite a bit of a difference. But I've had the I can't remember the name of the material, but it's the nickel colored ones that are hypoallergenic Evos, and they seem to flatten the tone out quite a bit. Lost a bit of life to it. And but again, we come right back to opinions. There's people who absolutely will swear by it. You know what I mean? And who's to say exactly who's right or who's wrong? At the end of the day, the biggest thing's going to be in your ears, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Everybody forgets about playing as well.
Yeah,
but
that's the other
channel
thing.
For the
practice,
players. Practice. Don't turn the knobs.
But also, don't forget the gear.
Love the gear. Love your gear. Anyway, the last question,
sure,
which is absolutely not related with the guitars. What are you driving?
What am I driving?
Yeah.
I live in the center of Chester, which is a city that is notorious for absolutely no parking. And when I moved there about 7 or 8 years ago, I stopped driving. So I have no car at the moment.
All right. Thanks a lot, Matthew.
Thank you.
Nice to
Thanks
meet
very
you.
much. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.